pouring out. So we're doing the Eightfold Path. Tonight we're doing right view. Thursday we'll do right intention because we will have right view completely down at the end of tonight. And we'll be ready to move on to step 2 because that's how this works. Is it's a tiered, and you're climbing a ladder, and once you have one, then you do the next one, and then and that no, that's a joke. Which I think you all know, but our little minds sometimes don't know that. And then next week, next Tuesday and Thursday, some of us are in Arvita Canyon doing sashing there. And while we're down there sitting, you're down there sitting with us in this amazing ancient canyon, but you're also sitting here and you're also sitting there. And Debbie will be on both Tuesday and Thursday because it is so important talking about right speech. If you look at the precepts, the 10 clear mind precepts, at least 4 of them, if not more, but at least 4 are about speech. And of course, we're talking in our minds all the time, and then it does leak out our mouths sometimes. And sometimes we think, and sometimes we think, oh my God, where did that come from? And I mean, anyway. So we're going to start with right view tonight. I have 3 different sources I'm bringing to you. Thich Nhat Hanh, I'm just from his little The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings. So we remember and weave him in. Says the first practice of the Noble Eightfold Path is right view. Samyak Drishti. Right view is first of all a deep understanding of the 4 noble truths, which we last week reviewed with Judith Bergier in her essay. The 4 noble truths: our suffering, the making of our suffering, the fact that our suffering can be transformed, and the path of transformation. The Buddha said that right view is to have faith and confidence that there are people who have been able to transform their suffering. I like that. Right view is to have faith and confidence that there are people who have been able to transform their suffering. And I would make it more a verb, that there are people actively transforming their suffering moment after moment, and that we are all helping each other do that. And if you don't think that's important, look at the world. Let's make sure we dedicate this to, of course, the whole world, and with profound awareness of the 3,000 and counting people who have died in the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. That's why we do this. Not to mention the ripples of suffering, people who are the first responders and the families, and on and on and on and on. So the Eightfold Path. This is the essay about right view, and its actualization is by Myo-An Grace Shearson. Grace is a friend. Grace is a character. Grace is an outspoken person. Grace is strong medicine. Although this essay is just straight on wisdom. So I'm going to read you some of what she has to say about right view and make some comments along the way. She says, the Eightfold Path is the continuous activity of living on the ground while exploring the vast, expansive sky. Isn't that nice? It's the continuous activity of living on the ground while exploring the vast, expansive sky. The Eightfold Path is an ongoing experiential process. So following the Eightfold Path is not something you get or have. It's something you do. I'd say it's something you live. Even the use of the word path suggests movement. We may walk, we may continue along, and we may explore all of the possibilities we encounter along the way. We travel this path, we walk this path, and as Zen students, our life becomes a walking pilgrimage to practice. That's nice. As Zen students, which we all are, as students of Zen, our life becomes a walking pilgrimage to practice. You are on a pilgrimage. We are all on a pilgrimage. Our feet are on the path. The path is rising to meet us, and it's called practice, continuous practice. I'm never going to get through this, but I'm going to tell you one of my most wonderful, I love is it's a digression. In one of the Indiana Jones movies. Sorry, it really was a digression. Maybe it stays there was this place in one of them where I think it was him. He had to step off the edge into a chasm. And only when you had the faith to take a step did the path reveal itself. With each step, some of you are nodding, is instead of dying, which was the fear that there was nothing there, he would take a step and all of a sudden the path was there. And then you take another step and the path was there. You maybe shouldn't go back and watch Indiana Jones movies, but I want to say that stays with me as somebody new, because that's what it is. You just never know. It really does feel that. I mean, most of the time it's just like la 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 la, but every now and then it feels like you're stepping off the edge of the world and you don't know what's there. But when you have faith and confidence, you just take the next step and the next step. We continuously engage the 8 limbs of this path because each limb integrates daily life activity. We remain on this path to grow and develop harmoniously with the Buddha way. Finding and adhering to this path requires right view, realizing that Buddhism, rather than our current course of endless craving, can help and end our suffering. That the teachings and practice actually can end our suffering. And as we end our suffering, we end the suffering of all beings moment after moment. Watching life from right view is also a continuous activity, not an object that we grasp and keep. Understanding right view means to accept that the activity of practice, not impulse, will help us live more fully. We are living on impulse all the time. It's very humbling and it's very scary. Your activity. Well, practice, you begin to have the sense that there's more space and there's another possibility. And you actually, my experience is you surprise yourself all the time. That a lot of the time you're surprised and humbled because you do the same old impulsive thing. But you also surprise yourself that more and more the path does rise to meet you and you do something different, or something different happens. That's where the confidence and faith comes from. We initiate right view and learn to activate and stabilize. It's a great word. I'm liking that word, stabilize. We stabilize in practice right view on the meditation cushion. The experience of right view, the view from the cushion, that's what we're doing here. Sit down, stop, breathe, stabilize, watch it all come and go. And even if you're not feeling stable, you are stable, because I didn't see any of you or anybody here stand up and scream and run out of the room. You actually stay here. And it does make a difference. Something begins to happen. It is the view of this very moment as it is, not as we wish it to be. We strengthen right view by returning to meditation. This act of returning to right view is also a verb. The entire Eightfold Path depends on right view. Within right view, we use all the skills of the Eightfold Path to perceive and engage with the reality of this moment. With right view, we can identify words and actions that help us to proceed from a practice perspective instead of from a karmic, reactive, impulsive place, which we're all, if you don't think you're a karmic being. Karma is just action. It's not necessarily good or bad, but there's a choice of whether to continue on a karmic path, which is habit energy, or that habit energy, karmic energy is transformed moment after moment into bodhisattva activity. Right view requires a shift from our habitual selfishness to a life-centered view. It helps us to see that all of life is interconnected and unfolding in an unbounded sky. Everything you encounter is your life right now. Everything you encounter is your life right now. There are no mistakes. When your life includes everything, this is right view. I'll bet when things started, actually, I heard today someone in Syria say that when the earthquake started happening, the sound of it, they thought they were back because they've been in the civil war so long. They thought it was bombs. They thought it was the war because the mind couldn't process, of course, that it could be this devastating earthquake. It just, how could this be your life? How could this happen? Incomprehensible. And our lives are incomprehensible. Incomprehensible, actually, if we looked wonderful and amazing. And of course, things happen that we can't even begin to imagine. Right view is the beginning, the middle, and the return of the Eightfold Path. We need to be able to see, to feel, and to know when we are on the path and when it is time to turn, go straight on, to stop, or to reverse direction. It is only from right view that we can identify the time to strengthen right intention. What's the next? To generate right speech and right action, to choose right livelihood, to practice right meditation and right concentration, and to enjoy right samadhi. How could we recognize the clarity or confusion in any situation if we have not activated right view? So you have to be curious. What is right view? Whoa, this sure doesn't feel like right view. My little mind is clearly in a very self-centered place. I mean, not right this moment, but catch it. No judgment, no shame, just, whoa, I know this one. Take a breath. She calls it right viewing. It's a choice and an activity we engage in or not. Right view, engaging right view plunks a smack dab down in the center of our own living reality. We turn away from the thinking, feeling, imagining function of our minds and toward our felt experience of the present moment. So I really want to bring forward the felt sense, which is body presence. Felt, what's the felt sense of this moment? Not as it's processed through our thinking or our emotional likes or dislikes. It's like waking up in a body, which is amazing. What's the felt sense of this moment? We do that on the cushion and off the cushion. Like a walking path we sense beneath our feet, we develop a stable, felt sense of right view through a variety of meditation experiences. Now, if I were to read you Thich Nhat Hanh, he's going to tell you, and I would encourage you to, mindfulness practices in the way that Thich Nhat Hanh so completely brings forward that. Grace is going to do it a little differently, although the same. Whether we are at home or in a formal meditation retreat, we recognize what it feels like to find right view. It's a felt sense. I am grounded. I am present. Feels like there's some spaciousness and choice here. I also know what it feels like to be locked in a loop where my head and my emotional karma is running me. Study it. Dogen says, study the self. Not with blame, not with shame, not with embarrassment. Just study it for the sake of all beings, because whatever you're experiencing, you have your own particular wonderful little way of doing it. But everybody knows anger. Study anger for the sake of all beings. Everybody knows fear. Everybody knows I want it. Everybody knows I don't want it. Felt sense in the body. Finding right view is what Eihei Dogen called taking the backward step. I always get so excited when somebody else pulls forward a phrase that I really love. While meditating, we step back from selfishness to spaciousness. Take the backward step. Then we return to daily activity with a spacious view that transcends our limited mind, even as we watch it. You just come back. That's all. I don't think it's anything mysterious. Feeling right view under your feet refers to finding the sense of spacious mind that orients away from selfishness to being present in this moment with life as it is. This is an open sky mind. Don't we go to open sky to sit retreats? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. You too can actualize this on February 26th by coming to Open Sky Retreat. Open sky mind. Thoughts and impulses cross the sky like clouds, but the sky, not the clouds, defines the view. And we also find it when we have stepped off of it. With right view, one faces the trickery of persistent selfish impulses. That's kind of interesting. It's like a little coyote. Really, it's tricky. You doing this for you? Am I really doing this to help you? What do I have invested in this? Just study it really deeply, clearly. Just keep asking, what is it? What is it? Which we're going to come to in just a minute. Right view means we recognize the ego's powerful pull to protect and indulge me and mine, and we take a backward step into a spacious room where we may consider the need to acknowledge our own requests or the requests of some very special group to which we believe we belong. We can ask ourselves, I thought that was interesting that she says here, you can have your own special interest, or you can think that you belong to a special interest group. Now, one of the ways that's being named these days is white privilege. Really study this, not as something bad, but to wake up in it, to find out what are the special groups that we think we belong to that entitles us to a certain way of living or having, or these are important questions. For instance, she says, taking a backward step is the simple shift from I'm angry to anger is arising. Really different. You feel the difference in it? I mean, we can practice with that. I'm angry, me, solidifying. Anger is arising. There is this feeling that I call anger that is arising in this moment, and there's spaciousness enough around it to see it with right view. Anger is arising. That gives infinite choices beyond our karmic view. Living right view, there are no rules and no fixed positions. A monk asked Yunmen, what is the teaching of the Buddha's entire lifetime? Want to know the teaching of the Buddha's entire lifetime? You ready? Yunmen answered, an appropriate response. What's the appropriate response in each moment? It's a really, really important backward step question. What's the appropriate response in this moment? Because it opens it up and it becomes creative and alive and imaginative. So, Grace says, cultivating right view. In Zen mind, beginner's mind, Suzuki Roshi says, maybe you know this one. I love this one. To give your sheep or cow a large, spacious meadow is the way to control him. You know that one? Mm-hmm. You ever think about that or wonder about? I think about that a lot, actually. I mean, when I'm thinking about things like that. So it is with people, first let them do what they want and watch them. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the beautiful things in Sangha, is we just welcome people exactly as they are. You don't have to come in here and be something different. And we watch ourselves just here. You don't have to be some special person. Just please come in and sit down. This teaching applies not only to cows, sheep, and other people, but also to ourselves and our thoughts and our impulses. Suzuki Roshi taught us to watch our cows or our own thoughts and impulses in the big pasture. We are not, when we sit, trying to control our thoughts. Like, that's a bad spot. Would you please just stop that? Like, take a breath, watch it go. Watch it come, watch it go. Give it a big pasture. In fact, we may watch these cows, our own thoughts, through the practice of contemplation. When we engage our thoughts by watching them, we enter an interactive relationship with them. It is through this active view that we may change our habits and return to a spacious view. You're not pushing them away, you're not inviting them in. As Suzuki Roshi said, don't invite them for tea, but you're coming into a relationship in a felt sense. It's all moving, it's all changing, it's all alive, it's all wondrous, it's all completely screwy. You can't believe it, here I am again. And it moves and it changes and something else happens. First you ask, Grace says, when something happens and you get triggered, notice it. You can ask, what is this? So this is a little different than open, spacious meditation, which is just watching things come and go. But when there's a triggering or something happens, you can do a contemplation and reflect back on it. I just noticed my dear husband, who I love very much, just did something that probably has happened 100,000,000 times, and I just got activated. Now, this is not his fault. It's like, what is this? Here it is again. It's like with curiosity and wonder and a lot of love, because I really love this person, and I love me, and I love this relationship, just like all of these relationships. Does anybody in this room on here, you guys ever get triggered and you trigger each other? No. Just like notice it. And what is it? What is this? What just happened? I recognize this. This has happened other places before. There's a clue here. And then you get to stop, and then there's a choice. When we ask what's next, we stand in the present moment with the choice to activate right speech and right action and to continue on the path of practice. If we don't move towards practice, we may choose instead to activate a selfish habit response. Even if you didn't get it this time, next time, maybe it'll happen and there'll be a little bit more space. But your kid does something. You love your kids so much. how in the world did you just get activated? Take a breath. Really want to be loving and kind. We're not all doing this all the time. Once we can see these patterns and know them, we have the choice to change our response. Emotions are intense and are often felt in the body. Once returning to right view has become a regular activity on the cushion, we can be actively engaged in daily life to contemplate what is it, what just happened, and what's next. With a neutral, open-minded view of the mind at work during meditation, compassion and curiosity develop naturally. Applying these qualities to our everyday upsets through contemplation practice of observing, mindfulness activates and returns us to the clear-eyed position of right view. And we can make good choices, new choices. Okay, so one last thing. Zenji, Earthling, she's got a new book coming out in March, I think, which I'm really looking forward to, and we'll definitely, it's about darkness. We'll take that up, yeah. But here, I was reading this for something else, I can't remember what, and I found she talks about the Eightfold Path. So here we go. I'm going to bring this up this time. Maybe we'll just have a minute here, and I'm hoping we can continue with this through this entire Eightfold Path. She says that when she leads workshops, what she does is she asks people, what is your favorite story of suffering? What's your favorite story of suffering? I mean, what comes to me is I know my patterns well enough, except for when I don't, is I have a favorite suffering story where, and then the question is, well, then she says, what is the story you most often tell? How do you tell it? And who is the hero? I am definitely the hero of this, and I am the victim of my most favorite suffering story. Some of you might have stories like this, but you may have other suffering stories. You just think for a minute, because maybe I'll ask you in a minute. What's a favorite story of suffering that comes up for you? What is the story you most often tell about suffering? Maybe you have some childhood. I'll bet you have some childhood story about suffering. Maybe something somebody did to you. Maybe you saw something somebody did to somebody else. How do you tell it, and who is the hero? Interesting. Not who's the victim, but who's the hero at the center of it. To whom do you tell the story, and why have you chosen that person or group? And for what reason do you share your story? I think it's often a way to bond with people. We tell our suffering story because there's. It's like, I'm going to share my suffering story with you, and then maybe you'll share your suffering story with me, and then we'll bond in the suffering. And usually the bonding and the suffering means that we bonded against somebody else out there who did something. And anyway, I'm just encouraging you to think about why do you tell your suffering stories? What's in this for you? I ask retreatants to tell their story to someone they came with, or to make a friend with whom to share the same story over the 8 weeks of the retreat. Whoa, so you better come up with a good story. Each week they are to tell the story from one of the various aspects of the Buddha's Eightfold Path. 1 week is right view. Week 2 is right intention, and so on through the remaining weeks, using right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. Storytellers are pushed to examine their stories more closely. Do we view suffering as a state that we all share each moment in interrelation, and not just as something we experience? my own special little story of suffering. Can we view the situation in the story from beyond our own view? Can we let go of what hooks us in the story and suspend blame and judgment? Is our speech an expression of love or respect in the story? Are we willing to let in something new about the story that might dilute its potency? Were our actions in the story filled with compassion and generosity, love and open-heartedness? Do we understand livelihood as being alive together and not merely as a vocation, and that the suffering has an element of mutuality? Is there a gap between ourselves and the other in our story? How do we use what surfaces in our world as the very source of awareness and mindfulness? How do we engage the clear mind or insights of meditation in our story? Okay, so how about if I'm gonna leave time for us to do service?